You're listening to Halftime with your host, Mylan Bittenbender, where each week we take a few minutes to step off the field of life and discuss the challenges and joys of navigating life in the middle years. I hope your time with us today will help you develop your strategy for a winning second half. Welcome to the locker room. You're among friends. Welcome to Halftime, friends. Today I'm joined in the studio by John and Robin Gissal. John and Robin got married at about their halftime point. They had some children from previous relationships, and so they had 7 kids coming into marriage, and they recounted a time when Robin's parents would come from where they lived in Hillsdale, Michigan, over to where they lived and help them out with the kids. They would be engaged and involved, and at that point in time in life, they were very vibrant, and life was good. But as they got on toward the latter part of their own midlife journey, John and Robin Gissal then had to turn around and begin to engage and help her parents out as they began to struggle with their health, as they began to get a little bit older and need more support. And that's one of the things that happens for a lot of people at midlife as they begin to go through this time, this stage where they kind of start midlife by saying goodbye to their grown children. And by the end of kind of the midlife stage, thinking very, very seriously about care that they're going to have to provide for aging parents. And so that's one of the things that brings us to this point of really considering our own mortality, having to deal with parents whose health is failing, who need our support and our strength. And John and Robin jumped right in. They did a fantastic job of helping her parents in the latter stages of their lives. So we're going to talk to them today about their experience and how that all went, what they learned, and some of the things that they experienced, and maybe some things that you're dealing with, or at least beginning to think about having to deal with if you have aging parents. So let's go now to that conversation with John and Robin Gissal. John and Robin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, well, I always am so thankful to guests because it's your time that you're sharing and your heart that you're sharing with us, and we're going to be richer for it. So, but before we get into the story about your care for your aging parents, tell us a little bit about yourselves. Tell us a little bit maybe about your childhood, what your childhood was like, and maybe your early adult years.
All right, I'll start. I was born into a family of I have 2 brothers, so there was 3 of us, but we were more of a 3-generation family. So my parents were a little bit on the older side. My brother's 20 years older than I am. My other brother's 6, so I was the baby of the family.
Okay.
So, and from birth on, I was in the church. My mom put me in the nursery from 0 on up. So I've been raised in a church, which has been awesome. And, just kind of went through everyday thing, teenage years as far as school and that kind of thing. But yeah, how about you?
I was blessed to be a part of a big family in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I have 7 brothers and sisters. I have 5 sisters. Think about that.
Oh my word. Yeah. Wow. I have 2 and that was more than enough.
Yeah. And a big Roman Catholic family in the suburb of Milwaukee. So it was I have nothing but good things in my childhood background.
Oh, praise God.
Amen.
That's great. So, so tell us a little bit about your early adult years now, like career-wise and things like that.
Well, for me, I graduated high school, and then I got married. So I got married very young, and about 5 years later, I started my family. So I have 3 children, and we raised them, and things went along okay, and then hit a little rocky spot. So unfortunately, those early adult years turned into a divorce. So that's a tough one, but that was part of my life at that time.
Yep. And I was kind of on a career path. I was in Milwaukee, so I went to dental school. I trained as an oral surgeon in Detroit. So yeah, I was mostly in school during those times.
Okay. I didn't know you so for a career, then were you a dentist or an oral surgeon?
Yep. I had a group practice in Kalamazoo.
Oh, wow. I had no idea. I didn't know that.
I
Okay.
retired 6 years ago. Yep.
Okay. All right. Good. 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 Well, maybe I should ask you to refer me. I haven't been to the dentist for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, I have a dentist out in in Bangor, and I missed my last appointment and haven't rescheduled it.
Oh,
So,
boy.
anyway, now you both somewhat grew up in the church. Did you come to faith early in life?
I did. Yeah, I
Okay.
think around 14 or whatever. I grew up in a Baptist
Yeah.
church. But again, like I said, I was raised in the church from the get-go and was baptized then and continued that, faith was very strong for me.
Yeah.
So some of my early adult years weren't exceptionally grateful for those, but we carried on. God blessed me with the
Yeah.
ability to go on to college, and I graduated as well later in life with a special education degree. So and
Oh, cool.
during that time, my mom was my support, right? She was helping
Yeah.
me with kids. So
Excellent.
And like I mentioned, I was a part of a large Catholic family. So church on Sunday,
Mm.
Catholic grade school. I went to a Jesuit all boys high school. And so when you ask me where I met Christ, it was really during my high school times with some of the help of the Jesuit priests there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And by the way, Robin, I have a divorce in my past as well, and that's hard to think about sometimes,
right.
but it's a part of my life and a part of my story, and I think it shapes us. I know for me, as incredibly difficult as that season was, it had a lot to do with making me the person that I am. Now, you guys met when? And we're married how long?
We married in 96.
Yep.
So I
Okay.
was 44, 42, something
Something
like
like
that.
that.
Robin was, kind
Yeah.
of later 30s.
Yeah.
So we
Okay.
blended our families, at that mid time of our life.
Yeah.
I had
Wow.
3, John had 4, so we had 7.
We blended 7 kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big family.
Yep.
It's a big
Yep.
family.
That's a lot of activity, and especially at those ages.
Yep.
Now, now I had this conversation with you guys last week. We talked just kind of in preparation for this, and one of the main reasons that I asked you guys to come onto the show is because at midlife, a lot of people are beginning to see the need, at least, to take care of their parents. As a matter of fact, a lot of times part of what starts midlife is the empty nest period, right? When all of the kids finally graduate and they leave, going off to college or careers or different, getting married, things like that. And oftentimes people enter midlife kind of with that beginning to happen and changing the family dynamics. And then within a few years, by the kind of end of the midlife stage, all of a sudden they find their attention being drawn to the needs of their aging parents.
Yep.
And sitting down and talking to you guys and hearing about your own experience uh, is powerful. I think that what you guys have been through is something that either a lot of our listeners are thinking about. They're beginning to, like, for example, for me, my dad is 85, my mom is 79. They're in really good health right now. They live on their own, and they're doing really well. But I know, I mean, it could be a call any day that one of them fell or something happens, and I know that it's just kind of out there. So what I'd like to do today is just kind of hear your story about what happened and how you ended up coming into that role, and then how that role went, and the things that you learned that you could share with our audience. So,
Yeah.
could you give us a little bit of a progression from the time that your parents we're talking mainly about Robin's parents, when they were healthy and vibrant, and they were actually coming to help you with those 7 kids,
Right.
and then kind of the progression to the point where you began to realize that you were really going to need to lean in and help them.
Yeah. My parents were into their mid 90s or early 90s before they really
Mm.
showed any signs of need. They were traveling, they had their own home, and doing all kinds of things. And then it kind of slowly, you could start to see a decline in some health issues on both sides. So that we visited them regularly, once a week. We were in a distance travel, but we made sure we did that. And each week, you could see something different happening, kind of with them, right?
So remember, we had a large family, so periodically we would treasure time away, whether it was a conference or something like that. And it's hard to bring someone into your home to watch 7 children. So oftentimes we did call our folks, whether it was my folks at that time or Robin's folks. Robin's folks were closer; they were only a couple hours away, so they would come and they could handle it. We would get calls, how do you handle this? But they were very vibrant and active in our lives, often traveling our way at first, and then like you mentioned, over time, things changed. Kids leave, and parents aren't able to travel as well, and pretty soon, instead of them coming our way, we're going their way.
So tell me, what were some of the signs that you began to see that indicated that you were going to need to lean in a little bit more?
For Dad, Robin's dad was really more of a weakness physically and a deterioration mentally. He was a big gentleman, strong and fit. In fact, he would take us on in tennis and stuff early in our marriage, and he could take us. But part of his size almost worked against him, because if he did stumble, it was a pretty good fall for him and a difficult time getting up. So physically and then mentally, we saw him deteriorate. Mom was just a steady force. She could tend to handle that and just continued to age very gracefully. For him, it was a little bit more of a cliff effect where it deteriorated quickly.
But she too had a physical need, and in her mind said, I can't. When she came to us and kind of said, I can't do this anymore, and that meant like take care of the home or make meals or do that kind of thing, that's when we really stepped in and tried to brainstorm on how we could help them to stay in their home, because that was their desire and their want, and we wanted that for them as long as they were safe. So we did go through some steps like that.
Yeah. So your mom reached out to you, or in a conversation indicated that she really needed some help?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
She came.
More her than Dad.
Yeah, Dad was a little bit more on the stubborn side. He thought he could handle it. And so Mom was the one that became more anxious. And then part of the anxiety was that she feared for him. Besides just the two of them, she was afraid that he would get hurt or drive somewhere and not know where he was, those kind of things.
Yeah. So you begin to realize that they're going to need your help. They've asked you, and you're beginning to see these signs, especially in Dad. And what kind of changes did you have to make? And was that all did that all happen in a whirlwind, like in a weekend, or was it just kind of gradual?
I would say it was more of a gradual progression. What we needed to do was talk with them. As they talked with us, then we would listen, then we'd offer suggestions. I think I told you we did Meals on the Wheels, trying to help them with not having to prepare food, have that come in. Just for them, it didn't work. They didn't care for that. So now we're back to square one. So when we visited, we brought groceries. We helped them, kind of plan meals, make sure they had the things that were easy preparation. Then you just kept listening. And then as my dad kind of kept going more downhill, then there were the next thoughts. Oh, I don't know if they can stay here.
Right.
Stay in their home.
Right. We just visited a lot, Mylon. We were 2 hours away. So my day off was Wednesday. So every Wednesday, that was our day. We would leave our house after the kids were gone, or even whenever we freed up, and we would drive that 2 hours, spend the day with them. and then drive back after dinner time. So we were like, I feel like we were sort of a steady influence in their life. They could count on that Wednesday visit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you mentioned you said we talked to them, and then a couple sentences later you said we did a lot of listening. First of all, I think um, there's one of the things we have to come to terms with is that this is a one-way transition, right? It's not like we can engage and kind of reverse the process and everything's going to start getting better. You know that it's only going one way,
Yeah.
and
Correct.
so being able to understand early on, we've got to talk about this. We've got to communicate. I think it had to have a tremendous positive effect on the general direction of the relationship and how things went. How did you? Because I know that there's a few dynamics at work. Number one, like you said, uh, dad was a little bit more reluctant, a little bit more stubborn, may
Yep.
have been harder to talk to or ask questions. Maybe he was struggling a little bit with he doesn't want to be in this place and doesn't want to deal with it and doesn't even want to talk about it. Um, and I'm sure you guys probably wanted to honor them and didn't want to impose
Yep.
your thoughts or your questions or your concerns. So, how did you? Do you remember? Was there a way you really entered into those conversations, try to open that up? Because I think that's where a lot of people they get stuck right at that first part.
Right. I remember sitting at they always sat at a kitchen table and we'd have coffee or tea or something. And my mom, she would share her struggles. And
Mm,
then in front of my dad and us. And then I would say to my dad, "Do you hear, Mom? Do you hear that
mm,
she can't do this anymore? That dad, she wants to, but she can't. And right
yeah,
now, you're having struggles. It's hard for you to help." So we tried to take what their words were and help them communicate to each other because they cared for each other immensely.
Oh my gosh.
Even though he might have been reluctant, he cared what
hmm
she thought, and how
yeah,
she felt. So we spent a lot of time at a kitchen table just listening and then letting them talk and interjecting. And it was just like a four-way communication thing. And sometimes saying, "Well, what about this? Let's try this," or "What do you think about this?" And but when you said it happened quickly, no, it took time,
yeah,
to come to a final conclusion eventually. So
Probably years, Mylan.
yeah. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
But those are that what you just shared. I hope our listeners picked up on that. That is powerful. For you to listen and really receive what she had to say, and then to turn to him and say, "Did you hear her say that?" I think too many times we don't want to. You kind of got to really get into the conversation, and you got to ask those tough questions. And I know there's a lot of times, Jen, my wife, she'll say stuff, and I'm not really hearing what she's saying. And I
Really?
wonder if we had a third party there. Yeah, because that never happens.
No.
But I wonder if we had a third party there that would pick up on those things better than I do and go, Mylan, did you hear that? I wonder how much more, because I love my wife. I love her like crazy. And a lot of times, things that I should be picking up on, I just don't for whatever stupid reasons. And I think for you to be that third person to sit there and to be able to pick those important things out and repeat those back to him, that's really, really important. That's
I think in their
that's great.
relationship there was a bit of an imbalance from a strength standpoint, so that when we would join them, mom would be able to share in a way she couldn't share with just dad, and
Yeah.
so we offered that to her.
Yeah.
So I think she appreciated that.
And we
So you
reversed.
kind of played a little bit of a referee role.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Especially because as that time approached, he was less willing to listen.
Yeah.
That part of his life, that's where he became more defiant. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think another thing that's really important, and I want to ask you guys to kind of speak into this. I know we live in a very youth-oriented culture. I think one of the struggles that we have dealing with aging parents is the bigger struggle that we have as people just dealing with um, people growing older, slowing down, beginning to lose some of their faculties, which are really at the end of the day, and I don't mean to sound too morbid here, but are signs of death. And I think to some degree, we have such an incredible fear of death in the culture that we live in that we don't, when we see it or when we feel it or when we sense it coming, we almost want to put distance between us. And I think for a lot of people, that becomes the distance between them and their parents who, yes, ultimately that's where they're headed. I think we have to come to terms with that. How did that feel for you guys? Did you sense that, or did you just see there's a need and you just leaned in?
I do feel like, again, because by the time we got to this point, they were in their mid 90s. So it was pretty easy to see that life end was relatively close. So I do think that for us, we could see the general direction things were going. And
Yeah.
I do think they accepted that too. I don't think they were living in denial of the fact that they were in their final years. So that
Yeah.
was almost in some ways easier on us. We weren't trying to get them to understand that their life was going to be short from here on out. They
Sure.
they understood that.
We wanted them to have the best
And
possible end of life or time. That's why we wanted them to be
Yeah.
safe. We wanted them to be comfortable, to enjoy the years that they had remaining. And we would literally say those words because that's
Yeah.
reality,
yeah,
right?
Hmm.
I do think I focus more on just making sure they're okay and not thinking about their end, but
Sure.
just but knowing that intellectually I knew that was we're getting close, but you never know. Right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
Yeah, and we don't want to sit around thinking about, all the time, oh, they're dying, but at the same time, my fear is, and I mean, as I was thinking about this conversation coming up, I've been thinking more about these issues.
mhm.
I'm thinking, maybe how many people are surprised when their parents need them, when this stage comes. And so they're kind of thrown off a little bit. They're just kind of out of balance, maybe have a hard time engaging because they're surprised. And that might be a sign that we don't want to think about it. So we push the ideas away and we don't prepare. Um, but you guys obviously seemed to, and maybe it was a little bit that your parents were into their 90s. Obviously,
Mhm.
we think a little bit more that way. But was there anything else that you would say helped you to accept the reality and be more prepared for those conversations when the time came?
I think a very high point of that was friends that were going through it as well. They were already in the middle of it, and we would be talking about maybe where our folks were, and their words to us were prepare. Know this is going to happen. Start thinking ahead.
Start
Get
talking.
talking about it. So we got some great advice from friends that were already in that stage. So I think that's what's important to understand and to seek help or conversation about that. And then another set of friends did it differently because their parents were very more um, forward, right? And thinking we need to be out of this house now. And
Yeah.
so it was neat to watch that situation too. I mean, we didn't have that, but it was still good to be in communication with others that are struggling or at least have gone through the steps, and they'll say, do this, don't do that. But that I think that one conversation really got us thinking we can't just wait for this to happen. We have to already be thinking about it and start preparing,
Right.
whether they're at that stage or not.
As that time got closer, Mylan, some of the calls that we got
Oh,
were more frantic
from our folks.
from our folks,
Yep.
so that it wasn't such a casual
Yeah.
conversation. So dad falls and can't get up, and we're 2 hours away, and mom can't lift him up. What do we do? Doctor's appointment, or just things became a little bit more frantic, I would say. So we realized that we can't keep going on like this. That was
Yeah.
over a few months that happened.
Yeah. Was there a time in particular that just you used the word frantic? I think people are afraid of that. To look at you guys today, I mean, you're happy and life is good and everything else, but sometimes, we only see the best parts of everybody's life.
Come
Could
on.
you tell us a little bit of what one of those instances was like and how you felt in the midst of it?
We wish we were closer.
Yeah.
I mean, we were 2 hours away. We lived in Kalamazoo. They were in the Hillsdale area. So that was difficult.
Yeah, it was a combination, whether my mom had a situation that my dad couldn't handle and then he's calling, or it was him. And it kept getting closer and closer in proximity. It happened more often than not.
Yeah.
And so we
What were those car rides like?
Oh gosh. You're talking. I hope they're okay. Did he get back up? I mean, it's like, what do we say to them? I will be honest with you, we would, what do you call that? Play role or role play what we are going to say to them. And we would talk it over so that I don't know, we did this with our children. We were a united front when we talked to our kids. We became a united front when we talked to our parents. It's like,
good for you.
We either need to do this or that. And we didn't waver. So they heard one voice, even though it might have been both our voices.
Yeah. That was maybe the blessing of a 2-hour car ride.
Yeah.
Sure. You had some time to process before you were in the midst of the fire, right?
Yeah. And we'd say, we don't want to do this anymore. Because I think that is one thing that may come up later, but you do need to remember that when your parents start aging, I think it's important to be there for them and to do what you can. And guide them and direct them and help them. But also you have to take care of yourselves as a couple, because it can be really draining. It can tear you apart. And, you have to think about each other as well. For me, I had a super supporting husband. For my parents, he was a total son to them. I was blessed by that. And so as people are getting into that, make sure that you as couples are united, and you come to your parents as the united part is very important, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the friends. I'm sure some of those conversations were helpful. How did you use those friends as a resource? You talked about you guys being able to be united, being able to make good decisions for your parents and come together. How did the conversation with friends go to help you improve that state or get to where you needed to be?
Mylan, throughout our lives, Robin and I have had a group of solid Christian couples that helped us in our blended family time, helped us as the kids left, helped us when we had family emergencies. We truly lived a transparent life with, a good 6 to 8 couples. And that didn't end at this part in our life. One of the couples was very proactive. You got to do this, you got to do this. Well, we didn't quite do it that way. Another couple, like Robin said, their parents they kind of chose to move to an independent living type thing, even maybe before they really had to, just seeing that would be better in the end. So it was really, we got a lot of advice and a lot of different examples, and it was really helpful. And we would couch them carefully when we talked to mom and dad, because again, we wanted to feel like for them it was their decision, even though we were coaching them, because they were proud and dignified. They needed to make that decision. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, I got so many questions right now. Did you have something else you wanted to say, Robin?
I was just going to say that it's a kind of a cool, unique situation that we had, that our friends were also friends of our folks.
Yeah.
They were very close. They were pen pals. They were people that we had a friend that's a nurse that would take care of mom. I'd ask her questions. She's not doing well. She'd answer her and she'd come and visit. So we were very blessed by those friends that not only helped us with decisions, but they were friends to our folks so they would listen not only to us, but if somebody said this, well, if they said that, then that's what we'll do. I mean, they truly took their advice at heart as well as our own. So it's probably a unique situation, but it was pretty cool for us.
Yeah.
Well, John, you mentioned that your friendships, the tight friendships you had, didn't end in that season. But I think it's important to note, too, that they didn't begin in that season. Those
Right.
were friendships that you had in place. I think a lot of times people miss the beauty of the church. And in these days, we've lost a lot of our understanding of what church is really all about. We treat church sometimes like it's, well, the place where I go for good music or good preaching, or I go to learn, or I go to, do my religious duties or whatever. But the church, as Jesus started it, was a community of believers. It was the ecclesia, the set apart gathering of his followers. And when we make those connections, those deep family connections with people, um, it's it's important. We don't always. Sometimes those are even inconvenient. They take time and energy.
Mm-hmm.
But man, sometimes we never know how much those friendships and those relationships are going to mean to us, and how powerful they're going to be when we're in our own time of need. And so I'm glad that you guys had those friends there.
Yeah.
Now, how about other outside resources? Were there agencies, or was there a book you guys read, or videos that you watched, or was there somebody? I think of that book, "What to Expect When You're Expecting," for
Yeah.
expectant mothers. Did you have anything? What to expect when your aging parents need your help? What resources did you guys find helpful during that time?
Well, as we got closer to the realization that we needed to redirect them a little ways, we again, with some counseling from different folks, we started to reach out to different options, whether it
Mhm.
was something close to them, whether it was something close to us. Was it independent? Was it assisted living? So, as we started searching all the different options that were out there. Um,
We called some home care people and talked with them so they would come into the home and help. So we went through different avenues like that. We probably don't have those exact resource names that we
Sure.
did.
right.
We just said, okay, we need this. So who can provide that? And we ended up settling on assisted living. We tried independent living, but that didn't work. So
Yeah.
Yeah, now it sounds like, Robin, your mom was a little bit more open to that idea. Your dad was less open, um, and I know he was your stepdad, but you loved him like a dad,
yep.
and obviously were an incredible daughter to him and took good care of them. Um, but we talked. It just kind of briefly came up a few minutes ago, but I want to go back to that idea of. Um, respecting and honoring them and their wishes and what their true needs are. Because, sometimes it's easy to say, well, they're falling down. They need help. They need this. They need that. But they're whole people. They have emotional needs. They have social needs. They have all of these different parts of their being. And you don't want to intrude on that. You don't want to um, come in and be bossy, or take control from them, or anything like that. How did you navigate all of that? Like, I remember in our conversation last week, you said it's important to have some things in place, so that you can make decisions with them before you have to make decisions for them, or do it with them before you have to do it to them.
Right.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. So how did you navigate that?
I think that again, it's that communication. We were talking with them and we knew their difficulties and we were open about that. And I said, now how can we help you with that? Because my dad was starting to have stages of dementia, it was a little more difficult. But then we would share, well, how about this idea? What that idea? We
Mhm.
took his keys away so he couldn't travel. There were the little things like that you just kind of do. Then we
Yeah.
truly asked them, would you try this? The way we got my folks to go to the assisted living and to buy into it was say, let's make this a trial. It's just a chance. We're not going to sell your home. This is going to stay here. Let's just go here and give it a try. And
Mm.
that's how we got them to move from point A to point B or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
It
I guess,
became apparent that was necessary
yeah,
just by
Yeah.
what we were watching. Dad wasn't safe anymore, and
Right.
Mom was really, really getting more and more anxious, almost pleading with us to get involved more and more. So we finally got him to agree to give it a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
I
easy.
recently. Oh, go ahead, Robin.
No, I just said that was not easy.
No, that was
Yeah.
difficult.
Well, and maybe because I was just going to say, I recently watched somebody who is a gerontologist who,
Something
what do
like
you
that.
call the people who work with people in
That's
their
right. I think
elder
you
years?
could. Yeah.
Um, but they were talking about the fact some of the things that we don't think about is that sometimes for elderly people, going into a hospital or going into a home can be an absolutely terrifying
Yep.
idea. And they mentioned, which I never thought of before, but that hospitals, as much as we think, oh, you fell, you got hurt, you need to go to a hospital. Hospitals are busy places filled with strangers, fast paced, a lot of things going on. And for a person who's slowing down mentally, that can be a terrifying place. I never saw it that way. Did you ever have any experiences where either they were extremely resistant and maybe it was hard to understand why? Did you run into that at all?
All the time.
Mm,
All the time. Yeah. Um, when finally Dad and Mom agreed to give this assisted living, we did, because Dad didn't want to leave his hometown. We found a facility relatively close to his hometown to make him feel more comfortable. But we did see, once he made that move, he never quite accepted it, and he did deteriorate quickly. But on top of that, if he would have an incident there, Mylan, and fall and cut himself or hurt himself, and they would take him to the emergency room of that local hospital, those nights in that hospital room were terrifying for him. So
mm,
the way you described it is really, really accurate. You take someone in that state of life and you move them to a facility that's supposed to help them. I mean, they had to restrain them, and it was really bad. Um,
yeah.
so I
So we stopped. We
we
asked them, please do not
do not
transfer him. We'll accept whatever, and then
We'll
I would be there.
Yeah.
We
we'll
would be
come.
there.
Yeah,
But
just let
but
us
yeah,
come.
I think people need to be aware of those different stages of your parents' lives, and if they're not, and that care, that emergency room, or those helps aren't always big helps because
Right,
of
Yeah.
where they're at.
right.
It
It's
makes it
not the kind of
worse.
help they need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the help that you got from friends and the insights that you learned from others who were going through this experience with their own parents. Did you ever sit down with a counselor, a gerontologist? Did I get that right? or somebody who specializes in that area to get some insights from them?
We would talk with the people involved at the
At
different
the
facilities that we'd
facilities.
go to, and
Sure.
talk to them at the stage. This is where Mom and Dad are at. What do you think? And they would give us advice about timing and stuff like that. So that was probably the most, I mean, other than the input we got from people that we know that were going through the same situation, that was probably the
Yeah.
most of our input.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I think we were very, very close to our folks. So that helped, right? You kind of knew where they were, and they trusted us.
Yeah.
So some of the decisions weren't maybe based on absolute knowledge of where they really are, but it's more about what we felt they were at because of we knew them. We knew who they were, and what they were asking for too. They
Yeah.
would share. So when you have openness, it helps.
And at one point, which is very common, most stories will include this chapter. You did end up calling hospice. And you mentioned during our conversation how incredibly helpful they were and how much you believe in hospice. How did the decision, because that's a big one. That's a scary one for a lot of people. It feels like a really kind of a last chapter final decision. How did that process go for you, and how did that part of the experience go?
maybe we should back up just a little bit. 'Cause when we went to the
Sure.
first assisted living, my stepdad, he didn't last real long. It was probably what 3 or 4 months, and he passed away. So we went through that death and that time with my mom, and immediately we knew she needed us, and so she was willing to move to South Haven. So I think that's also important for people to
Yes.
hear, that proximity, closeness, again, taking care of yourself as well as that parent is important. So while we moved her close here, we were able to visit, and she did well. I mean, she was thriving, and it just because of age, she was 99 plus, almost 100 when she actually passed. So it was only not even a year we had hospice, right?
Oh, not, yeah,
But
6 months maybe.
So to answer that question, as we watched her decline, we watched her be in pain, and the doctors that we had to help her couldn't quite grab it. And I think we just realized, this is it. This is kind of the end. And we had her evaluated if she was even available to use
Right,
hospice, because
right.
it
Qualified.
wasn't like she had no his heart was great, everything was great. It was just that the old age
Just
decline.
natural decline, yeah.
And she did qualify because she was falling. There were little things that she was doing. So yeah, but that was a tough decision, and I'll tell you, it was a tough conversation with my mom, because that generation, hospice meant death.
Yeah.
And to her, if you mentioned that I'm dying, no, that's not what we're saying, Mom. We just want more care. We want somebody that can help you and be there for you. And so it was a process to talk her, to make her not feel like we were kind of giving up on her, I guess. And even our own mind was a little bit that way, but we needed the care and the help.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, that care was just amazing. The people would come and help with bathing sometimes, just talk with her, do some physical therapy. They don't do, obviously, care, because that's not what hospice is, but they made her feel very comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, hospice knows how to do that.
We do not.
They're trained to help you with that thought that, hospice is a scary word. So they know how to handle that really well. And they made Mom, over a few visits, feel comfortable with the fact that they were involved. So that was really good. It was so comfortable, so good to see them get involved, because they treated Mom in a different way than the medical people in a facility would. They were all about comfort. It was really cool.
And her faith. My mom was very strong faith, and they would talk about that. They would pray with her. They would do it was
really good.
Really good. She looked forward to having them come. Like, where is she? Why isn't she here yet? That kind of questions.
Actually, that brings me back to something else that maybe we can apply to the entirety of that time frame that you guys were so actively involved in their care. I think another thing that I see happen is, a lot of times when we're young, we talk about the first half of our adult years, the first half before halftime, before our midlife. We're very goal oriented. We've got dreams and aspirations. We're kind of going after it. In my conversation with Dan Webster last week, we talked about the first half of life where we're growing our career, we're growing our family, we're kind of moving forward, we're living outward, we're living above the waterline, and then we hit that stop sign. And I think having to care for older parents is somewhat of a stop sign in and of itself. It causes us to stop, to pause. But I think sometimes we can almost take our parents' care like another project or like another job, right? And it can become very mechanical in nature. Speak a little bit to the heart piece. Obviously, there's the physical piece. You guys made tremendous sacrifices. You put a lot of time and energy. You had to make big decisions. A lot of those kind of external sort of things that could be done in a very clinical, very cold kind of manner. But yet you had to be there, heart and soul, to love and be present and all of those things. Can you speak to that balance a little bit and how you manage that.
For Robin, that was easy.
Yeah.
That was her mom. That was
Yep.
easy for her.
Mm-hmm.
She was at the top of her list. It was remarkable for me to feel the need to help with mom. She was my stepmom. I lost
Mm-hmm.
my natural mom 10 years before that. And that became, like you said,
Mother-in-law.
that became excuse me, she's my mother-in-law. That became my job.
Yeah.
That we went every day when she was here for the last 2 years of her life, working on the bird feeder, cleaning up something in her place. Robin would be reading to the other people. We,
Mm.
you know, so I, in some ways, like for me, it gave me another purpose. It gave me, I was retired by that time, so it truly was a satisfying time for me, a
Yeah.
time that I treasured. It's really special.
As much as time it took, because again, because it was my mom, I knew I needed to do that. That's what you do. But
Yeah.
and I just did look forward to it. I mean, you just kind of had this little schedule you would go over at a certain time. And then when that happened, there was no longer, like, I realized then that how much time and effort, and then I felt so alone, so
Mm.
lost because I didn't have anything. You wake up, oh, guess I'm
Yeah.
not going to see mom, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So I don't think we did it wrong, but it is a hurdle you're going to have to go through when it's over.
Yeah, that's it. When
Yeah.
when she finally passed, there was a huge void in our lives.
Yep.
Huge.
Yeah.
We used to drive down the street, and our car would just go in there,
Yeah.
and it was so different for a while. Yeah, it took a while to get past that.
So I didn't tell you guys I was going to ask this question, so this may take you a second to think about it. But you guys obviously gave a lot of yourselves to them to help them through that time and that transition and everything else. But what did you get in return? What was the
Mm.
what was the return, the payoff for you?
The smile on my mom's face. I love you. Thank you. I mean, that was it was just it's like that reversal when you're taking care of a baby, and I don't know,
Mm.
they show you that love of a mom and the daughter and son, and I don't know, there's a lot of rewards. I just can't
Yeah,
even think what exactly they are, but
Yeah.
she was so appreciative.
yeah.
She there was we had little jokes, her and I. She was good at it, but I'd always tell her, I'm your favorite son, even though I wasn't her son, and she would laugh about it, and we would kid about it. But I tell you, she was so close and so dear to me that it didn't feel like work. It just felt
Yeah.
like that's what we should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope, because I'm a terrible type A personality, I hope I don't miss those opportunities. I hope I'm not missing them now. With my own parents, I I think about that. Again, I refer back to Dan Webster in the conversation, the last episode of the podcast, where he talked about the first half of life and the second half of our adult life, and the fact that there's a completely different kind of goal or end in mind, and developing character and really developing our soul is the kind of work that we're called to in the second half. And I wonder if that's not the kind of thing that needs to happen. And caring for our aging parents, maybe that's one of the beautiful things they can teach us and they can show us in that second half. We're not listening to anybody else in our first half of our adult life. We're too busy building our own thing and moving forward and going ahead and getting her done. And I think that there's some really powerful things that can happen in those relationships. And again, because we live in such a youth-oriented, youth-centered world, almost afraid of fragility and age and ultimately death. I think sometimes we're just not willing to allow ourselves to go there out of fear. And yet that may be the place where we have our richest experiences and gain the most from a generation who's lived that part of life.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree.
so
Well,
let's,
oftentimes, Mylan, as mom deteriorated, the I think we talked with you about this, the fact that it became more like we were handling a child again.
hmm,
And as a child, as a parent to a child, when that child fails, that is heartbreaking. And that's how we felt as she continued to fail. Even though we knew it was going to happen, it
mhm.
tore at us, because that's how we became such a deep caregiver to her. She couldn't take care of herself. The assisted living could handle the needs that she had, but when it came to loving and caring, um, we were there for her.
Well, and everybody's got a role to play, right? And I think when everybody plays their role, if the facility can take care of the physical needs, and that frees the family up to be able to be there to really put their time and energy into the emotional needs, that can be a powerful partnership.
Yeah,
Right.
that's how we felt.
So, so let's take a little bit of a detour here, and talk about family. Because I know sometimes one of the things, especially as a pastor, for a lot of years, working with a lot of families through these kinds of things, and in you know just seeing a lot of these things play out. A lot of times there's one or two siblings that seem to really carry the bulk of the load. Sometimes there's siblings that just they live too stinking far away to be able to really be engaged and do much about it. Talk a little bit about what the siblings who aren't the primary caregivers can do, or maybe what they need to know that maybe they don't see or maybe they don't understand. I don't know. Is that too big of a question or too much?
No, I think it's good. I would hope if that you were lucky enough to have that, to be able, again, the communication seems to be the key in all of this, to be able to
Mm,
communicate with them, have those conversations, and share what's going on in the parent's life. If I happen to be the single person, this of our siblings, but I had two brothers that were away for the distance, but we had that communication going, and they would ask, what can I do? And I think we shared with you my sister-in-law, which is my brother's wife. She wrote my mom letters and told
mm,
her just about her day. They didn't mean anything, but my mom knew what was going on in the life of her son and daughter-in-law and their family. And she treasured them. She looked for that once a week, she would write. So writing letters is a great way to stay connected and with at least the parent. My other brother would call, or he would send her songs and different things. I think it's important that they stay connected, even if they're not there, physically, but it's important for that parent. I could see my mom so connected to all three of us, even though, again, it got frustrating sometimes because I was the one there every day, but that's a great way for your siblings to be a part of their lives, FaceTime. I mean, all the technology today is wonderful.
Makes it so much
yeah.
better. Yeah.
We actually bought my mom a GrandPad, which allowed her to see and or hear things that she could actually operate. So for a while, that was a great tool
Right.
for her
What
and others.
what is a gram pad?
GrandPad is a telephone, but it's like a computer.
It's a little pad.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it played it. She could see my brother, when they would call, so she could visually see them, or our grandkids and our kids were very much a part of her lives as well. It also played music, so she would have that
Frank
playing music,
Sinatra.
all the time.
Yeah.
So, and it worked well. And towards the latter part of her life, or the latter, not year, months, she wasn't unable to operate it as well. But it was a good tool. So
Yeah,
those are good things to think about when your parents aging. Can they, if they're already techie savvy with a phone, that's great. She was not. Neither
Yeah.
one were. So we found something that she could operate and still be connected to friends. Friends would call too. So it wasn't just siblings.
Yeah,
or
it's an
son.
iPad, and they call it a grandpad because
Right.
it's simple.
No,
It's
Yeah.
there's very few icons. It doesn't do anything real fast. It's perfect. In fact, I'm close to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're looking for one yourself, huh?
Yeah.
We still got it. We were trying to sell it, but
I'm gonna
So
read it too.
so if your family, if your siblings that are far away, don't give up. Do everything you can to stay connected, right? Because
Yeah.
that connection
that's
is, and I've got to believe that those connections are extremely helpful to you, even though you are carrying maybe the brunt of the physical weight of the responsibility and all of that. I've got to believe that was still helpful to know that they were very engaged
yes,
and providing that support too.
very
I
much
think
so.
I think that there's steady communication, then you're not calling them once a month and having to
Mhm.
fill in the whole month. Of
Right.
this is what happened. This is what happened. They knew that last week. This is what It's like they're part of the story. Then you're
Yeah.
not trying to fill in details.
And visit when they can, even though they're away. It's important to they have to sacrifice too, make that time to drive or fly or whatever they need to do to spend time with their parent as well as, and then we got to spend time with them too. So it
Yeah.
was good.
That's the bonus.
So, do you have a favorite memory? As hard as the work was, and as engaged as you needed to be, and I know you guys made tremendous sacrifices during that time. Is there a favorite memory that you just carry with you um, from that time of really being engaged in that way?
Gosh,
There's so
probably
many.
I don't. It's not a single memory, but Mom had a really cool bay window out her place, and it looked at a wooded area, and she had a birdhouse in that, and that the birds just they would eat everything in there in one day. So my memory was most often the first thing I would do, or somewhere in that visit every day, go out there and fill that up. And she'd be sitting in her chair and looking out and watching me, and I'd be tapping on the window or something. And that's just something. I don't know if it's a favorite, but it's something I did so often, and she appreciated that it'll always be there. And during COVID, that was our way to visit. We would stand out that window, and we would call her
Right.
on a grandpad, and she would talk to us through the window.
Wow.
You took mine.
Oh, COVID. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Right.
Mom got COVID,
Yep.
survived.
Did she really? Wow.
What on her birthday during that COVID year, we our friend the nurse we got garbs, we all garbed up, had mask, hair, and everything, and they were able to bring my mom outside, and so then we were all with that. I remember singing. I think a couple kids came, or maybe it was just friends, but we sang "Happy Birthday" to her. Or here's the middle
Oh,
of COVID, right? We're doing that. So I mean, there are just so many things that you do because you want to or that you feel are necessary. And that was a tough time, but we still kept
yeah.
life as normal as possible for her,
Right,
you know?
right.
Yeah. And I would do exercises with her all the time. So people would be watching us and we're doing jumping, we're doing all kinds of things. I try
That's
to keep her
awesome.
young.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
you got to.
you
You
know?
got to. Yeah. Being old is just a thing. It's
Yep.
not
Yeah.
even real. It's a concept.
You
There's ways to stay young, and we got to do our best.
Yeah.
So, looking at other people, maybe you've watched other people go through this process. Are there things that you wish other people could understand? Like, if you could talk to uh, maybe the way you see people generally handling this situation or dealing with the elderly, is there something that you would say, here's something I think would be good for our culture to understand? Is there something you'd like to try to convince people of or share with them?
Wow.
Yeah, it's tough. I'd say don't be afraid. Know it's coming, right?
Yeah.
It's coming
Realize
and
that.
it's okay. And I look at it, they're my parents or they're a parent or whatever it ends up being. And you're called to love them and honor them it never stops. And so even when they're older, continue that thread. But it's more like, don't run away from it, I guess. Run to it. It's like we want to run to God, run to God, run to them, and honor them and hold them. Because in the end, when you ask about your memories or everything, it's just, there's so many great memories, even though it was maybe a trying time at times. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Those moments, so there's probably better answers, but
I almost
that's great.
I almost feel like I didn't realize it, but for me, it became more of an opportunity than something that happened to me. Yeah, it was a choice we made together, but it's an opportunity to be a part of someone's life at a real special time. You learn a lot.
You're giving back what they gave to you, right? They sacrificed in the beginning, just like, you're a little child, and they took care of you and whatever, financially, all those things. Now it's your turn. And that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
A life circle, it's pretty neat.
Yeah.
And do you think it's possible for us to, I don't know, I think we see death as such a tragedy. Obviously it's not a good thing. And, you said your mom was almost 100 years old.
Yeah. 1 month.
And it was still hard to say goodbye. Obviously, there's never a good time for that to happen. And yet I don't think God wants us to see it as some kind of catastrophe.
That's correct.
How do you think we can change our mindset about that?
Gosh, I think you just have to that's where your faith comes in,
right?
And as sad as that might be, if you look at it from our perspective in our world here, it is the giant steps that lets you go forward into your next life. So I think
as much as
I'm hoping I can look at it that way when that time comes.
As much as I felt sad to lose my mom, and it still was painful, I'll be honest, but the realization of where she was going, and she's going to be with Jesus. I mean, that is dancing. We're praising. We're doing all that. So we were blessed with a solid faith that sustained us through a lot of stuff. And she was that way as well. But she wasn't afraid. She wasn't afraid of dying either. And that helped us. And I think, again, knowing that this is our life on earth is so short compared to what we have to look forward to. So.
Yeah, I think I feel like we've lost sight of the fact that we are souls, and that this life experience is a small part of our ultimate existence and who we are and what makes our entire life. I think too many times when people are caring for aging parents or whatever, they think, well, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to finish this thing out and shut this thing down, be there to turn off the lights, when we should be viewing it as being there to have the opportunity to help usher our parents through the transition from this temporal broken world into glory for those who are in Christ, for those who have faith. And that can be a really powerful thing when we see ourselves coming alongside them, being a part of, getting to usher them into the next and best part of their life.
Right.
Yeah, it actually gives you a glimpse forward for your own life.
Yep.
Yeah.
So is there anything you look back and you think, man, I kind of wish we'd have done that a little bit differently?
Oh, yeah. You put that question out to us before, and we actually looked at that a little bit. I'd like to say we have a long list, but to tell you the truth, we don't have a lot that we would have done differently.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Don't be ashamed of that. No, that's great.
I'm sure there are things that if we would have done it this way, that might have been easier. But when we look at the whole picture, I think that we did it pretty well.
Yeah.
In one of the videos that I watched, again, I did a little bit of preparation for this interview. I'm like, man, I got to get my head in this, and it's not something that I've thought much about.
Right.
Even though, like I said earlier, my parents are at a place where I need to be more prepared to engage when I do. But one of them said something about um, being able to realize, or what they wanted other people to understand, was that this is a time where you have to make a whole bunch of big decisions that will not affect the outcome. And then being at peace with that,
That's very
knowing that the
true.
outcome is going to be something that you don't necessarily want. You know where this is going to end. And you can't make decisions that are going to change that. And you got to be okay with that. Again, I think, in the world that we live in, we want to be so strategic and we want to fix everything. And, this idea AI, wants to create a human being that won't die, and solve all of our problems. And we want to beat death and all of this kind of stuff. And it's like, when are we just going to accept it and realize that we got to make a bunch of big decisions, important decisions, but the end is still inevitably the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
And be at peace with that and actually find joy in it, as the scriptures tell us to consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials, difficulties, challenges
Right.
of all kinds. And so I think it's great that you guys can say, no, we really don't have a lot of
It was
um,
joy,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good.
There were
That's
moments,
good.
where it was rough, but you get through them because you love them. I think it
Yeah.
comes from the heart.
Yeah, we had, I'm not saying this for people to feel sorry, but we gave up quite a bit those last 5 to 10
Mhm.
years of our life. When was retiring, we had some freedom in our lives, and we decided not to take advantage of that and to stay put. And but I tell you what, we never ever regretted it.
Yeah.
And now we have some freedom, and we're starting to use it. But to tell you the truth,
Yeah.
it's okay. I wish Mom was still here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like to end a conversation like this by saying, is there a question I should have asked and I didn't ask? Is there anything that you would like to share with people that I didn't necessarily set you up with a question to do?
Gosh,
You covered a lot.
yeah,
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Well, it's been an hour and 5 minutes that
Okay.
we've been recording, so it is time to wrap up the conversation. But I just want to make sure I didn't shut it down while you guys still had something else you'd like to share.
no, we're not
No, thank
experts, so
you.
we're not going to give that kind of advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think it's
this has
an honor
been
to share it.
Yeah. Well, this has been a rich conversation. And again, I really appreciate you guys just have that heart of generosity. Obviously, you spent a lot of that sharing with your parents and loving them. And now today you've shared that heart with us. And I've got to believe for people that are watching this episode that you've said some things that are really going to sink in and give them some really important stuff to think about and prepare for, and maybe ways that they need to engage in their own situation. So,
Yeah.
Great. I
Well,
hope so.
well, I'm going to try to put a few clips from this out on Facebook and maybe put some prompting questions. And I do have a few resources that I'd like to share with people that I've come up with and come across. So we're going to do that in our Facebook group. And I'm wondering, would you guys be willing to kind of engage once this episode airs, and kind of make yourself available in that Facebook group for other people to find you there? Would that
Sure.
be all right?
Sure. Yep.
Good,
Be glad
good.
to.
yeah.
And how do you feel if somebody would like to reach out to you, if they've got questions or anything like that? Do you want to tell them where they could find you, or would you rather remain a little bit more anonymous?
Would that be through Facebook then, or
Yeah, you guys are on Facebook, right?
yeah, Robin is.
Okay. Okay.
We're fine with that. This is
Okay.
near and dear to our heart. So if we could
Absolutely.
either help somebody walk through it or answer a question. I mean, again, we're not experts, but it was our journey, and we can share that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being, again, so generous with your story and your thoughts and your ideas and your insights today. I know that it's going to be a blessing to a lot of people. So thank you so much for being a guest on the show. God bless. And John, you mentioned the fact that you have a little bit of freedom and you're able to enjoy some of that now. And I do hope that you'll enjoy getting to do a little bit more travel and spending this time together.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks for having us,
Yeah.
Mylan.
Yeah. God bless. Bye-bye.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What a great episode today, John and Robin. Thank you so much for sharing your hearts and all of the insights that you've gained throughout the years. I really encourage you, if you're watching this episode, to look in the show notes. I have included some resources there, as well as ways to get a hold of John and Robin if you got your own questions and want to reach out to them. I want to remind you to subscribe to this podcast, whether it be on Apple or Spotify or in YouTube. You can follow. And when you follow or when you subscribe, that helps grow this channel, but it also ensures that you don't miss any episodes. I also want to invite you to join us in our Facebook group, the Halftime Facebook group, where you can engage the conversation more, where you will see clips of this episode and other episodes, and where you can kind of find others that are on the same journey in the kind of same stage of life as you may be right now. And so I want to encourage you to jump in on that as well. I will have links to that in the show notes as well. And of course, like and subscribe and comment as you can. It really helps to bring energy to this channel. And as always, thank you so much for joining us. I hope this podcast is super helpful to you and encourages you in your own midlife journey. God bless. Have a great week. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.